fond memories about my grandparents. I don't get to spend as much time with them these days, but when my siblings and I were younger, my grandparents basically helped my parents raise us. Their home was our second home. We learned a lot from my grandparents, but even more, as children, we learned who the best grandparent was to approach, depending on what it is that you needed. If you're hungry, apple. If you can't finish your food, inko. If you accidentally broke something, inko. If you need help cleaning, definitely not inko. If you need someone to listen to your story, apu. Because chances are, inko will fall asleep midway through your story. If you need someone to remind you about important things, apu. And I actually had the pleasure of learning this the hard way. Back in 2005, I was in the Philippines. I was taking a shower at my apu and inko's house. I had just finished putting shampoo all over my head and was covered in soap. Then there was this loud knock on the door. It was my inko. He was like, "Sherlyn, what are you doing in there?" I was like, "I'm taking a shower." He was all frantic and was like, "We're in the middle of brownout right now. Don't turn on the water." I was like, "What?" But I'm all covered in soap. He said, "Just listen to me. Don't turn on the water." I then asked, "Well, how am I supposed to know when I can turn it back on?" He responded, "I'll come back to tell you." I'll come back to tell you when. So be patient and don't go anywhere. Yeah, like I'm going to go anywhere, right? Honestly, I've never been in such a situation before, but all I know is that it literally felt like forever. Especially when I noticed I was starting to shrivel up like a prude. Anyways, I waited patiently for my grandpa to come back. And finally, another knock on the door. It was my dad. He was like, "Sherlyn, are you still in there? We're going to be late." I was like, "Well, how am I supposed to finish if we have no water right now?" And my dad was like, "What do you mean? That was over 30 minutes ago." Are you kidding me? And do you know where my grandpa was? Sleeping. Very typical. But aside from that, we all know that my grandpa is the more passive, quiet, shy, and the very playful one. My grandma, on the other hand, well, let's just say this. You don't want to piss her off. If I got paid for every time I got barot, gunot, undot, or even bulupok, I wouldn't even need a job because, believe it or not, I'd be set for early retirement. My grandma was always the more strict and outspoken one. My grandparents definitely fit cliche opposites attract. But it is their differences that make them the perfect match for one another, which is evident in their 60 years together. I asked my grandpa, "Hey, Mom, what is the secret to a successful marriage?" And you know what he told me? He said, "Tandaan mo, yung babae, panay ang gusto. Maski bang sabihan na, rosas na yung banwa, o rin me, sabihan mo, wah, wala kang kanyang bot." In translation, my grandpa said, "Always remember this. The woman is always, always right. Even if they tell you that the sky is pink, don't disagree, because you will never win." And then I asked my apu, "Apu, what is your advice for the men out there?" My apu said, "Tandaan mo, patseng babae, sinabi ng nano, na buring sabyan, na dindaming sinabi mo, muling ali kami bakla. Bigyan ka kanyang oportunidad para alilan ng pagkibat mo." In translation, my grandma said, when a woman says what, don't assume she didn't hear you, because we aren't deaf. She's actually giving you a chance to rethink your answer and rethink what you said and change your answer. Despite their differences, my grandparents complete one another, and I only hope that I too one day will be lucky enough to find someone I can reach this milestone with. Apo ningkong, hindi special yung albo para kaya kayo. At sana yung albo ni mo niyang lugod at saya Maski era kasupane akakit at akakayade. Panay kayong at shooting kaya kaming puso at isipan. Kung kaming one, yung kaming abe kamo, malibat anyang malaki kami. Ngayon, maski mapanukso ka, meron kaming masaya ng pagkatulan.
Ava, give it to mommy. Give it to mommy.
Ako, sinerte mo kami masalete at inspirasyon na kapit sa sabihan mo at pangaral mo kaya kami. Yan ikalingon, panay mong sasabihan kaya kami, may kagalingon ng Diyos. Yan rin, salitang ikabindi kaya kami isip at kaya kami